Last year we decided it was too cold to stay in Nashville over Christmas break. Since we'd recently completed repairs on 989 Mike Alpha, including a brand new engine, we thought it would be fun to head down to Florida with a fairly loose agenda. I heard from a few people that St. Augustine was the oldest city in Florida, so we decided to make that our first stop. Karen also found a great deal on a nice room on the beach in St. Pete, Florida, for the last part of our visit. We figured we could fill the gaps as we needed. We looked at several options for staying in Key West, but apparently Christmas is a really popular time to visit. Every property we could find was priced out of our budget. We left K-Lug on Christmas Day. The ceiling was low but quickly lifted as we headed south. With 25-knot tailwinds, we made it to St. Augustine without refueling. We averaged about 150 knots. St. Augustine had some beautiful architecture, but wasn't really what we were expecting. It was filled with a lot of very touristy shops. It wasn't the old Florida authentic experience we anticipated, so we stayed the day and decided to continue south. We discussed Fort Lauderdale and looked again at the possibility for Key West, where we found a sailboat on Airbnb. After attempting to book it, the owner contacted us and said the winds were kicking up and he needed to pull the reservation, so we were back to exploring the East Coast. As luck would have it, I called my friend Keith and he offered his place in Fort Pierce to us, only minutes from the airport. The flight to Fort Pierce was easy. We saw a couple of ospreys along the way and also saw the launch pads at Cape Canaveral. Fort Pierce is a sleepy little town with beautiful beaches. Keith and Kai's place was perfect for the three of us, and we enjoyed falling asleep with the door open while listening to the waves. After 2 days in Fort Pierce, we decided to head to St. Pete, where we had lived for a couple of years. Karen found a reasonably priced room for the first 2 nights where we could also have the boat in a slip. This was key because I needed to resand the teak and protect it. The sun had taken its toll on it over the past year. The flight to St. Pete was pretty straightforward. I decided to avoid IFR flight following since the airspace looked relatively uncomplicated as long as we stayed to the south of MacDill Air Force Base. About 20 miles from Tampa Airspace, I reached out to arrival, got my squawk code, and landed at Alfred Whitted in downtown St. Pete. We Ubered to the hotel, checked in, ran into some friends, and had a couple of rum drinks while watching volleyball. Our friend Brandy let us borrow her car the next day, and we took the opportunity to start sanding the teak floors. Karen and Jack took turns, and within a few hours it was looking great. The boat fired up on the first try thanks to the diesel, and we motored it to our slip behind our room. That evening I put a coat of varnish on. I also took some measurements for a sunshade that's designed to protect the teak from sun to minimize future sanding. We spent New Year's Eve at Matt and Lindsay's home with friends, celebrating and lighting fireworks, where we also got to meet their new baby.
Yeah, I called him.
And I'm not even going to check you.
Yeah, you're checking it. You're supposed to.
Come on.
Was that right?
Don't make me pause it.
28, 39. It is
29!
29 though, right?
We spent the next 4 days at the Don Cesar. Karen scored a great deal, and we settled into the pool, the beach, and overpriced drinks, and occasionally checked the weather in Nashville to confirm we had made the right decision. Yep, 80 and sunny is better than 45 and raining. We added an extra day since the weather was poor on Friday. Saturday was the perfect day to leave, so we packed up and grabbed an Uber to the airport. We departed Alfred Whitted in pretty bumpy conditions and cruised at 4,500 feet over the ocean direct to LaGrange, Georgia. Winds aloft were between 25 and 30 against us. This was anticipated, and we made it to LaGrange well under our fuel minimums. It was pretty gusty in LaGrange, so I decided to not go full flaps and land with a little extra speed. We bounced down the runway in pretty hilarious fashion and refueled. We found a great little pizza place to refuel ourselves and finished up the last hour and a half as headwinds decreased. The landing at K-Lug was uneventful, and Jack drove us home.